Signagelive has been working with BrightSign for nearly 10 years now, and we can't tell you how much we value the partnership and the collaboration. I mean, really, really deep collaboration between the two organizations. Last year alone, for frame of reference, we did several thousand players that span the entire BrightSign product suite, including the BrightSign built-in from Bluefin and Nemo. So across all of those clients that we brought live together, there's really a couple of things that are pretty consistent. The most important one, they're some of the happiest clients that we have. So for that, again, BrightSign, thank you very much. We appreciate that collaboration. So in terms of introductions, I'm Robert Hanson, Director of Sales and Operations for Signagelive America. I oversee US, Canada, and Latin America. With me today is Tim Baker, our pre-sales engineer and our subject matter expert. He's actually joining us today from our headquarters over in the UK. Now, if there's something that you have more questions on, some more interest on, and you'd like to have a deeper conversation, reach on out. My email address is on all the slides here, but it's also really quite simple. It's robert@signagelive.com. So feel free to reach out and we'll help you any way we can. So a little bit about us. We've been doing this for over 20 years now. 100% cloud-based application. We deliver the solution to every vertical imaginable. Corporate communications, retail, QSR, healthcare, out of home, hospitality. We do it all. We have an open API and an API first architecture. So we realize that signage doesn't live in a vacuum and there's other pieces that need to connect to it. And that's why the development team has built the platform in the way that they have. We've got offices around the world. We've got clients in 46 countries. We got 2,500 networks. Keep in mind, a network can be anything from 1 or 2 screens or players on up to literally thousands. So I think the most important number here is that 5.5 million times a day, our platform's talking to a player somewhere in the world. So it gives you a little frame of reference to our breadth and capabilities. As I mentioned before, none of this would really be possible without our partners. And so when we think of a typical digital signage project, the ecosystem really includes all these pieces, but we're really only a couple pieces of it. We're the software side, maybe some API side. We need you folks to work with us to do the implementation, the project management, content creation, manage hardware, support, and so forth. So we need good partners, and we found many in mutual partners of BrightSign. Some of the reasons to partner with us: 100% direct. We never, ever sell to a client. Everything we sell goes through a partner. You're the beneficiary of inbound leads that we get. We hand those off to all of our approved partners. We've got a host of different licensing options and methods for you to use. We've got transparent pricing, which we'll talk about a little bit about later. But most of all, we've got support for you, not just technical support, but the sales support, administrative support, subject matter experts. Our team is your team. So looking forward to working with you. I'm going to breeze through these. Tim can talk to these a little bit more. Obviously, support's a big part of what we do. Every license includes support, gives access to our help center, all of our database and knowledge center of videos and how-tos. We've got a marketplace of over 600 pieces of content that are free to use and constantly being updated. Things like templates and weather widgets, clocks, menu boards, you name it. They're all free for you to use in any manner you like. Some of the unique architecture that we have is around our tagging. Being able to organize and manipulate players and folders and assets based on unique criteria, whether it be geography, where it's physically located within the corporate structure, all break rooms, et cetera. The tagging lets us create unique experiences delivered as client needs. Remote screenshots. Want to see what's on a screen anywhere in the world? Remote screenshots will do it for you. Synchronization. Many of our clients want to do video walls, or they want to do menu boards many times, and they want to have a shared experience across screens. This is routine for us with the BrightSign suite of products. Proof of play. Anybody in the digital out-of-home space is probably familiar with this. We have extensive reporting that basically tells you when an asset was played, where it was played, for how long, on what screens, where and when, and really produces that information so you can take it back to anybody who might be paying for that advertising. We recognize, especially with our larger networks, it's not efficient for someone to go in and look for things that might be wrong. So we've created proactive monitoring to allow the end user to be proactively notified when something's not right. And it just takes a lot of the guesswork out and lets our partners and end users be really responsive and proactive. Along those same lines, obviously, to compete in the corporate environment, we need utilities and capabilities like single sign-on and Active Directory. We've done all the heavy lifting that's already in place. It's standard in our application. Tim, did you want to maybe just talk about APIs and web triggers for a minute?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So in terms of the Web Trigger API, the Trigger API allows you to interrupt a whole range of players or devices out there at an instance. So we have some localized triggers, which we know works really well with BrightSign, and there's some examples of that we'll talk about later, and that's more local to the device. So you've got one trigger that's triggering that device to change content or to interact in a different way. What the Web Triggers API allows you to do is actually have a multitude of players, regardless of location, all switch over to content that needs to be there within an instant. A good example of things like emergency services or fire warnings or tornado warnings, or the same reason it could be alongside sports or stadia with goals scored or whatever it might be that needs to be there within an instant and not a kind of planned rollout.
Very good. Thank you, Tim. Along the same lines would be our network API, and this takes it that concept kind of to the next level. Do you want to spend just a second on that as well, Tim?
Yeah, the whole of Signage Live is built on a network API first driven concept. So if there is anything inside Signage Live that you need to pull out to your service, or maybe it's your own user interface, Signage Live is built to do this. There are several users outside of ourselves right now that use Signage Live simply as the engine that delivers the media to the devices and manages that network, whilst the user's experience is completely separated because someone's built on top of our Signage Live network API.
Excellent. And again, these are all items that we could easily spend a half an hour on individually, but just giving you, excuse me, a little scratch of the surface there. Again, one of the drivers from most of our corporate clients today is finding data from external sources, but actually it extends to other verticals as well. Menu boards, for example, want to drive data from external POS systems. We can do that on a really simple level. We can do that actually with a Google Sheet. Put your menu items in there, and it'll automatically populate to the slide that you've created. We do this with Power BI, Grow, Gecko Board, Tableau for data analytics, just to name a few. Third-party content providers, a couple of different flavors here. ScreenFeed, SceneSpire, some of you may be familiar with. These are kind of curated, entertainment, news, weather, sports, that kind of thing that you can buy packages for. We integrate with them very, very seamlessly. And then for those of you who may not have a lot of creative talent in-house, you can use Poster My Wall, SodaClick. They have millions of pieces of content that you can just drag and drop and send straight into Signage Live. Similar to that, the Adobe Creative Cloud product does exactly the same thing. Make all your content in Adobe and simply drop it into Signage Live directly. No middleware, no Dropbox, none of that comes straight into the platform. Really, really efficient way of getting it in. Nextmosphere, anybody in the retail space who's familiar with kind of the lift and learn experience has maybe seen this. We've had terrific collaboration here between Nextmosphere and BrightSign delivering these types of solutions. Again, these can be very nuanced, but just a little bit of an overview of some of the capabilities. We did a really interesting project a while back with a three-way collaboration between NEC, ALP, BrightSign, and Signage Live, where we did this in a retail environment to push real-time analytics. Really powerful stuff in the retail world. If you're interested in more information on this, we can get you a copy of the use case and the case study on that. So in a nutshell, what Signage Live Platform's designed to do here is really be that medium, that gateway for you to manage, schedule, report, and interact with the content in the manner that you see fit. And we realize that there's a lot of different roles in there. And so what we're going to do today next is have Tim give you a very brief overview of deploying Signage Live to large networks via a couple of methods, BSN.cloud, as well as bdeploy. And then we're going to give you a little bit of an overview of the Signage Live platform and then open it up for some questions. So with that, I'm going to hand off to Tim and allow you to take it from here.
Brilliant. So what we're going to do today is just take you through a really high level overview of the platform. Obviously, all of the things we've discussed today, we wouldn't be able to go through all of them because there are nuances and it depends on what a user is looking to achieve. So we'll start at the very basics, and that's just about getting those players connected into Signage Live. Obviously, this depends on who you're speaking to. Is this someone that wants 1 to 10 screens or someone that's looking to deploy 5,000 to 10,000 screens? And the breadth in between there. And depending on the answer to that will depend on how you want to kind of go through this. Now, obviously, first instance, if you're using Bright Auto-Connected BSN.cloud, you can go over into the device settings, and we're actually available in the partner applications down here. And then you'll be able to select Signage Live and then go onto that device and just select the Signage Live application. That will then take Signage Live onto your device and kind of onboard it directly. That's ideal if you've got a few devices or you've got a manageable amount of devices that you do on a one-to-one basis to get up and running. Now, there are other ways of achieving this depending on what you're looking to do. One of the things that we've actually just been doing with a rollout recently of between 300 and 500 devices is actually use the B-deploy functionality to do this at scale. So within the Signage Live network, what we can actually do is go over to the settings and licenses tab here. And we can go and have a look at different ways and methods of delivering Signage Live to those devices. If I go in to our plus button here, I can go to my players, and you'll actually note that we have two different ways of achieving this with BrightSign. We've got BrightSign Manual and BrightSign with BDeploy. There's not too much to show you here directly because actually the concept behind this is very, very simple. You can download a copy of the CSV template and you can enter in the unique number for the BrightSign device, plus any information that you want to take up to Signage Live, like the player name, the network information, any IDs or tags, functions that you want to have built into that player by default, as one large CSV file. Once that gets uploaded, Signage Live will connect with BrightSign, grab the data for that correct player using its unique identifier, and then start running Signage Live on those devices. We have had rollouts like this that have switched over from 300 to 500 devices in a day, even less than that, because it is as simple as simply uploading that content or uploading that CSV file, and it will start to transfer over to Signage Live. So that's the first instance, and just about getting started with Signage Live, dependent on what level that you're doing. Now that you've done that, you'll be within the Signage Live kind of universe here, so we can go through what it looks like to actually upload some content and deliver that to your screens. One of the most core functions around Signage Live and how we work is how would we like to scale this and what's important to us when we're looking to grow. You have the ability to create playlists. And if I go to my drop down here on the content drop down, I've got the option to do playlist, layout, and publish. The entire concept behind Signage Live is to avoid doing the layout and the publishing more often than not. So actually, the end experience is simply going to be going into our playlist editor and making any changes to the playlist that we want to. Obviously, at this point, you'll be able to upload whatever content you want, such as images, videos, whatever you're looking to actually deliver on Signage Live. As Bob mentioned, there's a whole host of content that's free and built into our marketplace. We could go into that today, but there are just so many apps that we could talk about. I will mention and highlight a few of them that are particularly useful. So in this section now, we've got our playlist editor, and it's split into 3 sections. It's nice and easy to experience. Left-hand side, you've got a range of folders where you can go and open those folders depending on the content that you want to deliver. In the center section, you've got the content that was within that folder. And on the right-hand side, we've got a blank playlist or a new playlist from scratch. You may, after several days or weeks of getting Signage Live set up, depending on how integrated you want it to be, already have some playlists that you can go and open up and then make amendments to. But if we're assuming today that we're starting from scratch, all I need to do is take my assets, regardless of whether it's image, video, whatever it might be, and click and drag them onto the right-hand side. At this point, we'll start to create our playlist or a rotation of content on the screen. Now, we'll just mention before we go into the next step is on the plus button on the top left is where we do upload our content. So that's marketplace, media asset, web page, whatever it is you're actually looking to deliver. I have just preloaded this. So this is our Signage Live marketplace. As I said, I won't go into too much detail, but we've got some really useful tools that are most often requested. Things like clock, weather, calendar integration that will connect to Office 365 or Google Calendars by default, and then just pull those data. Both of those also work alongside touchscreen interactivity. So if you've got a touchscreen and you want to book sessions there live, you can do. News applications and a whole host more. I won't go into all of them. Going back to our playlist editor, so now we've added our content. So I've just got 3 assets here that will rotate around on loop indefinitely, unless we tell it to do otherwise. We'd save that playlist, give our playlist a name. So we'll call this, example for bright sign, and then we'll hit save. That playlist is now saved. We can come and open that again at a later date to make any amendments, or we could say we want to publish this to one screen, or we could actually say that we want this to publish this to every screen that we own. There is no limit there. You might actually find it most beneficial that you have one playlist that actually delivers to multiple players all at the same time. So when you go and make an amendment to that playlist, you're not having to do it on a one-by-one basis, and it saves you a whole host of time. Bob did actually mention something earlier with the tagging. Now, I won't take you through the tagging directly today, but if we talk about tagging, what this allows you to do is say that a range of our players are grouped. We can group them dependent on location, or we can group them dependent on what kind of content, or whether they're portrait or landscape. The choice is completely yours. The reason that tagging is more powerful than just folderizing or putting your players into folders is I give you an example where this playlist is most beneficial for us to send this to every single device that we own. And that's a large scale option. It might just be half of them, whatever your solution ends up needing. But someone goes to you and says, well, that's great, but actually this video file that we've got here, I want to set a condition to it. I don't want this to turn up on location one because it's just not relevant. So what we can do is go to the conditions on this tab and actually say that I will or will not show this asset based on the tags that we made earlier. So for example, we've got one here saying, actually, I don't want to show it in bank one, or specifically, I only want to show this asset in bank one. These are some of the tools that we have built into the platform to make your experience as easy as possible. And we don't know exactly what your experience is going to be. So what we've done is created a tool set in here that allows you to deliver a whole range of options. Some of these may be beneficial, some of these you may never touch, but the fact that you've got them there just gives you that freedom of building out your network the way that's going to be easiest for you to manage. The same thing I will add on to with the playlist editor is it could be that actually you have multiple users or people on different locations that you want to give them access to that playlist, but not maybe the full network. So we have control assets within here, and that allows you to go and say, well, actually, I've got a nested playlist or a localized playlist in this case. And what I'm going to do is say, I've got my local user. I'm going to invite them into Signagelive, and they're going to go and manage my localized playlist, which means that they can go in and make any changes that they need to. But they can't go and control the master playlist. So they can't control these three assets. They'll be given access to a separate playlist that nests in there. And again, some other tools and functionality, because this is actually predominantly where you spend most of your time. The concept behind this is to make the user experience as easy as possible, even though we know, maybe from an admin side, that the potential behind Signagelive and the way it delivers the content is pretty much unlimited when it comes to management, users, and the ability to deliver that content to screen. So now that we've created our playlist, or maybe multiple playlists, the next step will be to publish that playlist out. And we're taking this on the assumption that you want this playlist to be full screen. I will just quickly mention that we do have a layout designer here. And the layout designer is the ability for you to say, I've got one screen, actually I want to host multiple playlists on that screen. A kind of prominent example that we get there is we have corporate environments that want to have clock and weather and news running alongside their regularly scheduled content. Some of the most extreme versions of that would be the left-hand side of the screen is showing a localized piece of content from the local user, and the right-hand side is actually mastered by an admin. And then on the side of that, we've also got clock and weather. So it all comes down to preference and what the user wants. And that's actually where we spend most of our time when we're discussing with potential clients or users that are using Signagelive of the best practices, is because we can really narrow this down to make the experience nice and easy, regardless of what you're looking to do. So as I said today, I'm going to leave the layout designer because I know we're on a fairly limited amount of time, but obviously if you need to see that in more detail, then feel free to reach out to us directly. I'm going to take this playlist and I'm going to publish it out. And I'm just simply going to say that this playlist is going to go to a selection of devices. Now, the reason that the publisher doesn't need to be accessed very often is because it asks you some key questions to start with of how you want to deliver this. So the first one is, when do you want this content to be delivered? You can have when nothing else is scheduled, which is basically a piece of content which is the evergreen content that sits behind the scenes. So if someone's forgot to upload something, or human error happens, people just haven't uploaded in time, and they've set some assets to expire in the future, or they've set some assets to turn up only on Mondays or Tuesdays, when this when nothing else is scheduled content will jump in place should there ever be a time when nothing's about to display. So you always end up with something on your screen. The more typical, which is what we'll run with today, is between the chosen dates and times. So I might say, I actually want to run this from now on until further notice. I may even say, actually, I want to run this every other week for the next 4 weeks. It's completely up to you. It gives you a lot of tools into scheduling how you want that content to turn up. The last one I'll mention is as a result of a trigger. So as Bob kind of alluded to earlier, things like Nextmosphere and a whole host of other inputs that you can do locally on that device will be set up here. So you could have a key press For the next sphere, lift and learn, let's say, for example, someone lifts up an item, the screen changes to display whatever it might be wanting to display, and then returns when that lift and learn is returned. This is as a result of a trigger locally, and this is all pre-set up within Signagelive. You just need to plug the two items together. But going back to our kind of typical rollout or our typical plan, we're going to say between the chosen dates and times, we'd like this playlist to run every day and all day. Then it's going to ask us, okay, well, what would you like to publish? And in this case, I'm going to say it's a playlist. You can see I've got all the playlists which I've made recently, but I can also folderize those. And I'm going to go and find my example here and then hit OK. That's going to load up a preview for me. So you can see what content you're running. You can always be kind of well advised of what's going to be appearing on your screen before you hit that final button. And then you can select which players you'd like to publish it to. So whether it's going to be one player or hundreds of players, it doesn't matter. And you can see here those tags that we were talking about earlier are all displaying here as well. I can highlight one or multiple players like so. And then this, this could be one or multiple. It could be hundreds. It doesn't really matter. It's just about how you want to roll this out. Hit the OK button. That'll do a quick double check to make sure that our content is supported, our players are turned on, our players are ready to receive their content. And you can see if I do a quick review here, I can look at the content one more time, look at the players one more time, and then hit that publish button. Now that that is done, and that is kind of one of the things that an admin or someone who is going to be more in control of managing the content may do on their first day or week setting everything up. But the whole concept, as I said at the beginning, is to make this really simple. So now that we've done that, that playlist now knows it's going to be dedicated to those players or a single player, depending on how you've set that up. Now, when it comes to managing your content, all we're simply doing is going over to our playlist manager. I won't save this for the moment because I don't want to affect a live network out there. I'm going to go and open my example playlist that we were playing with a moment ago. And then I can start making my changes, deleting off assets that are old, adding in assets that are new, whatever it might be. All I need to do at this point is simply make the updates. I've now got just one asset playing, and I will hit the save button. And there we go. And that's it. It will come up with a notification now just to tell me that if this playlist has already been published, I don't need to do anything else. It will automatically be published out to all of those devices that we have. So there are some other elements we can focus on in a little bit more detail. I did want to take a moment just to talk about some of the tools that are built into the playlist editor that I haven't already mentioned. And I'm aware that we're kind of at a crux here, so Anne, do stop me if I start to go over here, but I know we're getting close to time. One of the other elements just to mention is if I do have an asset in my playlist, I've got the ability to go in and set a few parameters. As I mentioned earlier, validity, reoccurrence, the ability to schedule out as far in advance as I need to make sure I actually don't have to log into Signagelive as often as I may have to do otherwise. So I can go in here and go to validity, for example, and say, actually, I'd like this asset to start displaying as of the 17th, and I'd like it to expire at the end of the month. If I hit OK, a nice clear blue tab is put next to that asset just to make it very, very clear when I log in what is displaying, what is not displaying, and what is about to expire. So they'll go blue when they're not visible, green when they are visible, red a few days before they expire, and then amber a few days before they're about to expire, and then red once they've expired completely. The one other element that I'll touch upon in there, if I double click on the asset again, is reoccurrence. So if there's images or videos that you only want to turn up on Mondays or Tuesdays or weekends or whatever it might be, you can schedule all of this out. So that, in a nutshell, is some of the really simple functionality within Signagelive. Obviously, all of these things that we're talking about from a playlist level can be done in the zone of a screen. So if we take away the concept of just displaying full screen, we may say, actually, I've got my layout design. My left-hand side is going to show all of this scheduled content, all of the planning all built in, and the right-hand side is going to show some other assets as well. So that's a bit of a high level. And again, I won't go into more detail on any other elements, but if you do want to ask me anything else about it, I'm more than happy to schedule a call and take you through the entire experience.
Really good. Thanks. Thank you, Tim. Appreciate that. Thanks again. Appreciate the partnership, and to everybody on the line, appreciate the time today. Thanks so much. Have a great day.
Thanks very much.
You too. Bye, everyone.